Good afternoon. We will now call the meeting of Waco City Council September 1st, 2020 to order at 3 p.m. Joining me online today are Mayor Pro Tem Andrea Bearfield, Councilmember Hector Sabito, Councilmember John Kennard, Councilmember Darius Ewing, and Councilmember Jim Holmes. Please join us now for a moment of silence. Thank you. On March 16, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to a state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16, 2020 until further notice or until the state of disaster declaration expires. In accordance with physical distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, this meeting will not be open to the public. This meeting is being broadcast live at wccc.tv. The audio is also being recorded. The video and audio recordings will be available to the public. According to the Governor and Attorney General, statutes that may require face-to-face interactions between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that the governmental body offers alternative methods of communication with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to submit their written comments on a listed agenda item were asked to submit their comments to the City Secretary's office by 11 a.m. today. The City Secretary will read into the record the comments submitted for the items on the agenda at the appropriate time. Individuals who register to speak on a public hearing item will be allowed to speak remotely for 3 minutes. We will now recess the regular session and convene to work session with a report from our city manager. Bradley.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I don't have any changes to the agenda today and no organizational updates as well, so I'll move straight into the Halsey Report.
All right. You go to slide number 1.
Sorry, Halsey, I thought it was set.
There you go. Okay, the required triennial airport full-scale exercise was held August the 20th at the Waco Regional Airport, where first responders and other agencies put boots on the ground for a live practice of each agency's disaster response plans. The exercise simulated a plane crash at Waco Regional and involved response from Waco Fire, Police, Sheriff's Office, DPS, NTSB, Office of Emergency Management, AMR, and even alerted the local hospitals. The objectives were to test communications between agencies and to better coordinate their actions to provide the most efficient response to a disaster that we hope never happens. The first day of school around Waco area was a mix of options, virtual, online, blended, or in person. And the start dates were just as varied. La Vega started on August the 13th, Lorena and Conley on the 17th, China Spring on the 19th, Midway, Baylor, and MCC on the 24th, and Robinson and Waco will both start on Labor Day, after Labor Day on September the 8th. Enrollment at local colleges, MCC, TSTC, and Baylor saw a significant shift from in-person classes to online and are a hybrid lectures online labs in-person type status this year. And speaking of Baylor University students, now that they're back in town, we've added a link to our covidwaco.com website to Baylor's COVID dashboard so everyone can see how their student population is doing with the virus. In coordination with the National Park Service, the dig shelter of the Waco Mammoth National Monument is now open. Staff has been working to safely reopen the park by following guidance from the White House, the Centers of the Disease Control and Prevention, and the state and local officials. Disc golf safety signs have recently been placed in various locations, identifying areas where a flying disc could present a hazard. Signs can be found at Cameron Park and Brazos Park East courses. Parks crews have been busy on the beautification project at Sul Ross Park. This project will impact all areas of the park, including refurbishing the pavilions and tables, updates to the irrigation system and graffiti removal, and surface enhancements to the playground area. And that completes my report.
This is Holmes. I just want to make one quick comment. Larry, great report is always there, but I just wanted to comment on the Mammoth site out there. Happy that that's opened back up. That's out on D5, District 5. Proud to have that monument in Waco and attracting people to the community. And I know they're going to fundraising right now too. Go to the site online. They're great leadership out at the Mammoth site. fantastic.
Thanks, Councilmember. We do have on the agenda today for you, Council, 4 public hearings. And I wanted to spend a couple minutes on public hearing 2020-583 related to the budget. Of course, we're considering a resolution to adopt and approve the City of Waco operating budget and capital improvements program for the upcoming year. Later in the business session, you'll hear from Paul Diaz, but I did want to take a couple minutes to mention some of the great things this budget does for our residents. It really supports the advancement of several of the council's strategic goals, including development of the long-awaited park in China Spring. It takes a significant step forward to modernize our fire apparatus fleet with 7 new trucks. A reminder, these trucks are replacing units that have an average age of over 18 years. The budget also reestablishes a neighborhood engagement program, as well as our community policing program with the addition of 7 new positions in police. And it adds resources in our information technology department to support continued improvements in open data and transparency. All that being accomplished with a proposed maintenance and operations tax rate that's 2.8% lower than the prior year, and a total proposed tax rate that remains unchanged in order to meet our bond obligations. On the agenda tonight, you have 15 resolutions, and I wanted to highlight just a couple of them. Resolution 2020-588 amends the City of Waco financial management policy statements concerning the unassigned fund balance goal for the general fund. This item takes us from a current rate of 20% unassigned fund balance to a proposed rate of 28%. This approach is only possible due to our conservative financial management strategy, and it brings us closer to into alignment with our peer cities. And we also anticipate it will help us in future bond ratings, which allows us to access low-cost debt instruments to fund all the great capital improvements going on in our programs. Resolution 2020-590 approves an amendment to the existing interlocal agreement with McLennan County for economic development. The change to the Waco-McLennan County economic development policy brings our base minimum wage for incentivized jobs to $15 an hour. And any incentivized business must have an average wage across all jobs of at least $17.50 per hour. This is the first change in the base wage since 2001. This move, I did want to highlight, it only affects projects that are recruited and incentivized under our economic development program. And it will definitely bring the base wage closer to the averages seen in many of our economic development projects over the years.
City Manager Ford, I just want to say thank you so much for bringing this resolution forward, which I fully support. I'm very grateful to you and city staff and the WebMec board that has taken this, what I would consider, increase in the right direction. I think moving the minimum wage from for incentives from 12 to 15, I think is definitely a positive for us. And it's just going to make our city that much more desirable to live in. So I really want to thank you for the work on this resolution.
And I'll just add, I appreciate our partners' accommodation and working with us as we work to be more strategic and, I don't know, I think innovative in the way that in what we pursue and the way that we pursue it. And I think this is a good first step in that direction. Because as I've said, several times, I think when we're looking at economic development, there's what this is addressing, this resolution, which is the human part of it and the jobs that we create and the wages that they pay and the benefits and the economic power that it brings to our citizens and their employees within our community. And then there's also the capital base. And I think those are two very important and strategic things that may not necessarily all work together. But there could be projects that focus on one and not the other, and I think that's okay. So I appreciate this first step. I'm looking forward to more strategic discussions in the coming months as to other ways that we can further enhance and make our economic development apparatus even more strategic and forward-thinking for the betterment of our community. So, but I do appreciate staff and our partners' work on this to this point.
Let me briefly echo my fellow council members in saying that this is a long time coming. but we appreciate staff and our WebMAC partners for their diligence in seeing this through. As Councilmember Kandard mentioned, this is but the first step in how we advance and move the needle forward for our people first, but for our businesses. I mean, you'll never question that we are a pro-business, progressive council who wants to see the advancement of industry within our community. But at the same time, we have to find a way that it is good for both them and the people that work for them. And this increase in wages is a step forward. Now we've got lots. We are a council that thinks out the box. So we're going to challenge you in the future about how we continue this progress. But we are most certainly very pleased and supportive of this step in our future for our citizens.
Let me just jump in here and say that the thing that excites me the most about this is that the track record of our partnership with the county and incentivizing businesses to come here is that we're bringing businesses to town that are going to hire Wacoans and not strictly seek to bring people from out of town to work here. And so when you look at the fact that we have so many Wacoans that are hard workers and want to work and they just don't have jobs that pay them well, that we're setting the bar this high to bring jobs here, to bring companies here that are going to hire these Wacoans and increase their quality of life by giving them more disposable income, more income to find ways to better themselves and better their lives. That's what gets me really excited. So thank you, staff, as well as our partners in bringing this to fruition.
All right. Thank you for those comments, council members. The next resolution I'd like to highlight is Resolution 2020-598, which awards a contract for construction services to Archer Western Construction for the Highway 84 corridor wastewater system improvements, Phase 2, Contract A, project in the amount not to exceed $7.4 million. This work improves both the Church Road and Cloyce Creek lift stations and force mains and increases their capacities. We anticipate significant growth will continue in the 84 corridor, and this growth would not be feasible but for the continued investments in our water and wastewater systems. Currently, these investments are supported entirely by rate increases on our customers. The next resolution I wanted to highlight was...
Hey, Bradley, this is Holmes.
Yes,
I just
sir.
wanted to comment on that 598, and that's out in West Highway 84, not my district out there. Yeah, lift stations and force mains. They've been an issue since I've been on council. There's so much growth out there, and I know this helps facilitate what we have going on out there. I learned a long time ago on council that you got to make sure your citizens, when they turn the water on, it comes on. When they flush the commode, it works. So these are two very important projects out there as we redo those lift stations and fix those force mains. So I'm excited about the growth. The neighborhoods out there, great folks, and these are worthwhile projects.
Thank you, Councilmember. Resolution 2020-599 is the last one I wanted to highlight. It awards a contract for construction services for the Crestwood Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project to Sky Blue Utilities for an amount not to exceed $3.091 million. The project will replace existing sewer piping and joints that currently sit in drainage ways with new sewer lines that will sit in the streets. The project should reduce our leaks and necessary repairs in the future.
Hey, Bradley, this is Hector. I just want to say thank you for this resolution. Also, I'm excited about the work that's being done, but I was very pleased to see that the bid was awarded to an MWBE, which I think is very important that our city contracts are going to businesses and entrepreneurs of all ethnicities and backgrounds. So thank you so much for including this in the resolution. I was very happy to see that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Today on your agenda, Council, we have 6 ordinances. They're all second readings. And if there's no further questions, that concludes my report.
I'll just circle back real fast because I didn't realize we were going through it, and just say that, again, I appreciate, back to the budget items at the beginning, that I appreciate staff's work on that. This is a challenging year. I expect next year to be even more so for you guys. I think this budget reflects our priorities, addresses some needs, and shows a continued commitment of the city as an organization to invest in our community across a number of ways, which you highlighted. And so I just wanted to again commend you guys on putting together what I believe is a really comprehensive and also forward-thinking budget that addresses a lot of things that need to be done in the city. And you were able to do so in a year that is anything but normal. So thank you guys again for all y'all's work.
Yeah, this is Holmes. I'll kind of echo John a little bit here on that, because we kind of busted through there's a lot of stuff in the agenda today, and I know we need to get to the items in the work session, but on the budget, hit a lot of things that we had talked about early in the budget cycle, and just quickly enumerating the best-in-class services, police and fire. We did some expansion there with a focus on community policing, economic development, the riverfront, Elm Street, Floyd Casey. These are very tangible projects that we're seeing occurring right before our eyes here. And just driving around downtown, I invite all citizens, just look what's going on down here, even in this pandemic, as we continue our economic development initiatives. Number 3, specific goals related to equity and inclusion. And we've been talking about this for a long time, trying to get it formulated and getting in the budget. And you guys, staff, did a great job of incorporating that and setting some groundwork for us as we go forward as a council. Improved infrastructure. We still have the pavement program going and continue to work on that in a big way, with a goal towards, just in this year, increasing our PCI by about 25%, going from 40 to finally getting over that 50%, on our way to 70 as we try to get there. Number 5, establishing a strong cash reserve. We're going from 18% to 28%, which thank you, staff and city management, for getting us in a position where we can do that, set up that fund where we're right around 41 million. It helps us from not only from a bond rating perspective, but puts us in a position to be nimble as issues come up. We'll have that liquidity. Number 6, you're very prudent in holding the line on compensation adjustments. And I know that's a big gulp down for city employees, but I really appreciate that as a councilman, that in this pandemic, that we're not laying people off, but we're trying to keep people employed with the city. And then lastly, tax relief, and this year we couldn't do what maybe some of us were wanting to do, but I think in the context of, again, this pandemic and possible sales tax revenue deterioration, I think it was the right thing to do to kind of, again, we reduced the what we could have charged, but we have the tax rate. We're kind of holding the line on that. But I think we're in a good position to next year, if and as we come back through improved sales taxes, to be in a position to looking at some sort of a tax relief program. But anyway, great job. And again, as John said, I think this is a good budget, and I support it. Thanks, Bradley.
So the great thing about going after Councilmember Holmes is that whatever multiple statements I have are now down to like 2. So I echo my fellow council members, and I just, Councilmember Holmes brought it to the attention, but I think we ought to just kind of marinate a little bit in the fact that though our rate remained flat, we added an incredible number of services that are forward facing, that have not necessarily been in existence before, that will change the lives and livelihoods of our citizens. And that's the goal, to make better lives for Waco. I think we had a clear, concise strategic plan, and with the opportunity that we had in really breaking down our mission and vision statements for our city and for our people, and really aligning those budget items up to that. I think you all did a phenomenal job in making it clear what our priorities are and finding a way to answer those calls for those priority statements. We appreciate the fact that we will have more forward-facing neighborhood initiatives, and in response to our nation's outcry, really looking at how we add and aid our public safety, so that shifting things like adding community policing officers, working with our nonprofits in behavioral health management. Those are all things that have been included within this budget. Our business owners, making sure that they have educational resources that they need and the opportunity to have a place to launch from. And, that was started with our small business recovery grant. So you all have done a lion's share of work without adding. So that's to be applauded and amended. So I appreciate everything that you do and have done and will continue to do. And I mean, we got to fight, and we did it. We did it in the midst of chaos. As John said, I'm not sure, how we will continue to twirl these plates in the air next year, but I have no doubt that because of the forward-thinking staff that we have, that we'll continue to be forward towards the mark.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councilmember Holmes and Mayor Pro Tem Bearfield for those comments. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's very proud of the work that our staff has done on this budget and the way that they have been able to meet the council's priorities in very tangible ways. Are there any items council would like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, the consent agenda will include resolutions 2020-587 through 2020-601. And I will turn it back over to Bradley to introduce the next work session presentation.
I had two, and I didn't know how we were moving through these, Mayor, I'm sorry. But is there any more discussion on public hearings? Or I know Clint sometimes does that, but we're not doing that today, right? I just had one comment there, and then on the one ordinance I had a comment on.
Bradley?
Council,
There's no further discussion on the public hearings, correct? I mean, right now, we can take Councilmember Holmes, but I'm saying you're not planning to make any further presentations about the public hearings.
There'll be comments, and of course, in the business session from the individual staff members on those public hearings, but nothing more in the work session portion of the agenda.
So it's appropriate, Councilmember Holmes, for you to go ahead and make your comments now. Thanks.
Okay. On the two public hearings that have to do with the two PIDs. I'm supportive of both the service and assessment plans, and so no controversy there. But on both the PID, the downtown projects that we have, how we fund those, and the PID and the TIF and City Center specifically, and then whatever other ones we have. If we could just kind of do maybe it's a future agenda item more than anything, of just a look back on what was the charter, what did we create those for, the TIF, what did we create the PID for, what did we create City Center for, have we had a fulfillment of those goals or a charter, or do we want to continue? How do we rate ourselves on what we've done in TIF and PID and City Center in the context of, basically TIF was incentivize downtown businesses. PID is, keep things clean and safe. And City Center is kind of facilitating those goals on behalf of the city. Again, I'm supportive of what we're doing here, but I know we are running, there's a nice fund balance in PID. And there's a lot of TIF projects still out there that we want to work on. But in the context of what we're doing here on PID, at some future, and again, maybe I'll say this in future agenda items, more definition around going forward in all three of those programs.
Okay, we'll get you down for a future agenda item on that one. Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Holmes, while you're on that one, do you mind if I piggyback off of you real quick before you get to the ordinance? Yep. I'm sorry, I thought Clint was going to cover these in work session as well, so I do apologize. But I do have a question about public hearing 584. When it comes to the PID, I noticed that there's a carryover from prior years of approximately $1.1 million. Is that for a specific reason we're carrying that over?
And Mayor and Council, I just want to mention that Mayor Deaver and Councilmember Kennard have filed affidavits of substantial interest on 2020-584.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wheel, I think the appropriate thing to do on the carryover, because there's some history there on how it started and how it's occurred over a couple of years. I think the appropriate way to respond to that is via an informal report at the next council meeting.
Okay. And that's perfectly fine. What I would request also, City Manager Ford, is to also maybe come up with a strategic plan of how that 1.1 could be spent to more or less fall in line with the goals that we have for the PID. It's one thing to spend money, but it's another thing to spend money strategically so that our goals could be met. And so I would love to see that as part of the informal report as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, thank you, Councilmember Holmes.
I'm jumping to that last ordinance now, which is kind of a follow-up for what we talked about at the last meeting relative to the ETJ septic systems. And I know there was some follow-up here on, I had asked for peer city kind of study on what other cities are doing. And I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about this one, but are we saying in that peer city comparison, which is on page 358, that most other cities in ETJ, if they're using public water, they have to go to an acre, but if they're using whatever, some other water system, they can stay at a half an acre. Not most, but a material amount of these other cities. Is that correct? I don't know. Probably need to ask Clint that.
He's just stepped up to the table, Councilmember.
All right. Thanks, Bradley.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Holmes. 5 out of the 14 require an acre minimum lot size, and that would be for properties with public water, and then they jump up to 2 acres for lots or properties without public water. So that would be a well system, and then most of the others have a similar half acre minimum for public water, and then 1 acre minimum for lots without public water, and then those vary depending on the types of systems as well.
And our proposed language doesn't really differentiate, correct?
That's correct. It's based on the type of system.
Okay. My second question there is, right now there's no real runway. As we talked about impact fees and stormwater fees. I know it's not apples and apples, but this, if we signed it as is today, we'd be saying today is the effective date, not really giving folks a heads up that this is now well, I guess I knew from the last meeting that it was on there, but we're making it effective today if we all approve it tonight, right?
Well, it's 10 days from the publication of the ordinance, but the existing lots and tracts under an acre can still use the subsurface systems. This would just be moving forward. If you were subdividing, you would have to have at least an acre. So all the existing lots and tracts under an acre will still be able to use the system that's allowed now.
Is that pursuant to the added language there in 5.2012C, where it says existing lots or tracts of land being platted as of September 1?
Yes.
Is that where you?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And then just being platted still, it's not a defined term. I guess I'd rather have that. What does being platted mean? That existing lots being platted. That means being kind of throws me off there. And even platted. I mean, it seemed like that should be defined. What are we talking about?
It is defined in the subdivision ordinance. We don't have that included in this change, but it is in the subdivision ordinance, and that would include lots that have an approved preliminary plat, tracts of land that have not been platted yet, and then platted lots that have been recorded platted lots.
Okay. So you're using what was the document you said that kind of talked about?
But the section, yeah, it's in section 5, which is the subdivision ordinance. It's in the definition section that has all the definitions for plats and preliminary plats and final plats.
Okay. All right. I just had some drafting concerns here and runway concerns, but I think I expressed those last week too, but you've answered all my questions. That's all I had, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Holmes. I'll now turn it back over to Bradley to introduce the next work session presentation.
Thanks, Mayor. Wanted to call on Eric Pena. He's an IT program manager, specifically in our GIS group, to walk us through a new addition to kind of our open data strategy, and that's the online interactive code enforcement dashboard. I know Eric's going to walk through the project and team members, but I wanted to personally acknowledge Eric's work. I'm real excited for y'all to see this, and I also wanted to acknowledge Deidre Emerson, who has kind of served as our executive sponsor on the project. And I hope you'll see kind of how this project aligns with our goals to create greater transparency around our data, as well as a high-performing city government. So at this point, I'd like Eric to take it away.
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for giving me just a few moments of your time here to allow me to demo this application that we've been working on. Oh, it's been about 2 months, and we've been able to develop it in-house using our ArcGIS Enterprise software. So we're pretty excited about it. Some of the staff that's been involved, of course, the GIS department, myself and Jonah Herbert. The applications team, Stacy Eller, helped out with database access and code enforcement. Some of those team members, Chris Randazzo, Galen Price was in some of the meetings, and Kelsey Montgomery as well. So they gave us a lot of good feedback and input on how they wanted this application to perform. So how it got started, I think, was Deidre Emerson sparking the project, asking, can we get monthly violation reports in a dashboard type view like we've done for the COVID pandemic. And so Chris Randazzo contacted me, said, can we do this? And definitely we could. So it was a matter of just getting with them, figuring out where the data sits, and then pulling that data and building a dashboard off of their existing data. So they've been using, code enforcement has been using EnerGov, Tyler's EnerGov product for close to 2 years, and they have a good history already about 2 years history of violations. So with Stacy's help, we were able to tap into that database, pull it, process it, map it, and then push it out to the cloud to be able to display it on a dashboard online. And there's a lot involved there, but we have some scripts that run, and they run every 6 hours, every day. So the data is never older than 6 hours. So it's a good system. It's working well, and it's live. And let me just kind of walk you through it and see if we can give you kind of a sample of how it works. So by default, when you load the dashboard, you'll see that by default, you'll have a last 30 days filter applied. So by default, you'll always be seeing the latest cases. So you can see that we have 550 cases citywide within the last 30 days. So the last 30, we're September 1st, so the last 30 days is essentially the month of August. You can see the type of cases on the left-hand panel here, results, and each one of these graphs has a total. To get a quick view of the violations, what kind of violations there are, and what result has taken place, and what's open and what's closed as well. You can also view individual cases here. You can zoom down and view a location. And a little bit of information. The screen is a little bit squished here, but you should be able to, viewing this in a regular desktop, see all this information pretty clear and crisp. A little bit of information for each case. You can also filter by different time frames. So this month, obviously, we're going to have 0. We're September 1st, but you can look at year to date. If you're interested in how many code cases and violations we've had, 7,626. If you're interested in seeing just a specific council district, you can select Council District 1. And the map will filter, and all the data charts will filter, and your code case totals will filter as well. I'll just click another one. Council District 4, you'll see the number of cases. Again, this is year to date. That's the filter that I have applied. If I were to change that to the last 30 days, we get a good number, and then we can see by type what kind of cases we have. There's some definitions here in this tab here that if you're not familiar with some of these codes, you can get some definitions on what kind of cases they are, what kind of violations they are. If you're interested in just seeing zoning use, you can also click. So this is all interactive. So if you click this zoning use category, your results will filter through the map and to your totals and to your individual cases as well. So we have 39. If I wanted to look at just open zoning use cases in Council District 4 for the last 30 days, we have 29. And you can look through each and every one. Not a lot of information. Some of this is confidential information, so we didn't want to share too much. But you can get an idea of what's open, what's closed, and what kind of cases are currently being processed. Let me see here. When you get buried deep in these filters, you can always just reload, or you can always just refresh your browser as well. There's no need to go back and try to reset things to default. You can also look, like I said, they have a history, so just about a 2-year history, so you can go back to 2019 as well, and you can maybe just run some quick comparisons by month, maybe, or by district for each year. Let me go into 2019. And here you can view by month as well. So we'll see 9,437 cases last year, citywide. If I wanted to look at August, I see we had 567 cases in August 2019. If I jump back to 2020, give it a second here. 550 cases. So you can see, you can kind of compare year by year if you'd like. 17 less cases this year than last for the city. That gives you kind of an idea how it works. You can drill down to your heart's content and get whatever kind of information you need for whatever district or inspection area or type. And we hope it's a useful tool for you all, for the public. A few points I wanted to make was this was all developed without any additional purchase to code enforcement. This is a system we already have in place. And also code enforcement, it's no added work to them. They stay in their system. We just tap into their database, pull their data, and then display it through our ArcGIS enterprise system. So I'd be glad to answer any questions if you'll have any.
This is Holmes. Great. This is a great step. All of us are very concerned about code enforcement. It's at the top of our list of priorities on getting it streamlined as efficient as possible. I had a question on, again, this is cool. Looking at all this, it's amazing. I like it's live and it's very graphic. You can see all the different items going on. Do we have anything that tracks like process and response time and resolution and more of a process software than other than just location and identification? Where is this? When was the guy notified that there was a code problem? When was it? Are all these still outstanding? You kind of know what I'm asking?
Yes.
The process of
the internal system, EnerGov, Tyler Technologies EnerGov software, I believe has a lot of that capability. So this is more of like a public facing for public viewing. All that in-house detail would come most likely out of the EnerGov system.
Great. I think this is fantastic. I don't want to take the edge off of this because it's very nice. But as Councilman, I do want to see, and I know we've talked about this before, on seeing some of the process issues, because as some of the feedback you get from citizens is, they didn't respond quickly enough, or that's been outstanding for a long time. And that's going to be a completely different report, I'm sure. But as we see resolution of these code violations, I think it's important to the council that we're addressing them quickly and efficiently, and we have the proper manpower in place to do that. But this is great. Thanks.
Hey,
Aaron. Sorry.
Oh,
go ahead, please.
No, you're great. I just wanted to say I'm incredibly pleased that the city and city staff has taken steps when you look at our COVID dashboard and now our code enforcement dashboard to make really helpful, obviously for vastly different purposes, but really helpful forward-facing dashboards that are accessible to our constituents to go and find necessary information. That's to start. So thank you guys for the work you've done in putting those together. Secondly, I think the rest of council would agree that our heart is to see all of these cases resolved, and not because we want to put undue burden on the homeowners, but because we want quality of life to increase for people. And so I think that, it's really, really good to have the accountability of having a public place where people can see the amount of cases that there are, to hold us accountable, to make sure as a city we're doing what we need to get these resolved. And with that, I think that, we need to make sure we're doing a really good job of marketing assistance programs that we have as a city and with our partnerships to these people with code enforcement violations, specifically the nuisance violations, so that they know that they're not in this alone and they don't have to take on the financial burden of getting a house up to code. Because I've gotten one before for properties that we've owned, and they're a bunch of sort of mumbo jumbo that's 2 pages long and all these different numbers and violations. So I think that it's really, really crucial that we make sure that we're informing the public of the opportunities they have to have assistance in getting their homes up to code, and also that we're walking in this with them to get these violations handled. Because I don't think any one of us on council wants to look and see violations going up. We want to see at the start of the year and a steady decrease over the course of the year. So that's it for that. So.
Hey, Aaron, this is Hector. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I just cut you off. Thank you so much for your presentation. I appreciate it. As Deputy City Manager Emerson would tell you, code enforcement has a special place in my heart. I'm sure she gets tired of receiving emails from me, but I do appreciate this proactive approach of dealing with code enforcement. I do have a few questions for you. Is the site live already?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And how will we get the word out to the public to let them know that they can look here and to make sure that we're getting the word out that this is live and ready to go?
Well, our goal is to create a very prominent place on our city website's front page. So we've been working with Dory and getting with Dory to find the right spot to have that as a prominent tool that the public can access. So we're working on that.
Two other things.
I just think this is such a great tool that I want to make sure that the public knows that it is out there living, and people can refer to this. Just as one of my council members mentioned, COVID Waco. I mean, it has been a phenomenal to see people go on their website and get information, what they need about COVID. And I would love to see the same thing for code enforcement as well. And then the last question that I have, is there a Spanish version to this site as well?
No, but we do have a Spanish COVID dashboard, so that's next on the list then.
Well, I just thank you for that. I just think once again, I would not do my job if I didn't ask for it to be in Spanish as well, as much of our constituency, Spanish is their dominant language, and it would just I would appreciate the ability for them to understand the information as well.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, sir.
And I'll just, again, chime in very quick and just say, I appreciate this. Again, I think the more data that we have access to, and particularly in a format such as this, that is available and easy to understand and easy to just kind of click through and digest, helps us make better decisions, and also helps keep the public more informed on the work that we are doing to make sure that our communities are improved. And I mean, I think that your quick demonstration here just shows that y'all are very busy. And that you're working very hard to make sure that our properties, both residential and commercial, are in compliance and are up to code. Because particularly when it comes to housing, a house that is fixed up and is code compliant is a healthy house, and that has many knock-on effects. It's one of the reasons why we have the lead abatement program going, and other things to help to address Councilmember Ewing's concerns that there are resources available to when we do identify these things, that there are ways that we can work to address them together. And then I'll also echo Councilmember Holmes and just say that on the more robust process database access to kind of see where things are in the process and the resolutions of those. I know that that's a little more of a kind of maybe a heavier task, but I do think that in some format, being able to have that information available too, so we could quickly see how each of these cases were resolved down the road would be useful. But I think that'd be helpful, but I just want to say this is fantastic, and I think this is going to be a great tool that'll be very useful going forward. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you for this presentation and demonstration of what another great tool that is coming out of city management office, the work of staff and everything. I know how this is beneficial for us, so we can really disaggregate this data from a council perspective. But can you all help me understand what this is, in promoting the fact that the code enforcement site has a listing of where code violators are? How does that help the general public? What is it that they're supposed to glean from this?
I think there's context. Many of the complaints we get into the code office from folks in the neighborhood, they want to see that there's activity happening on their complaints. And this gives them a tool instead of having to track down a member of the code enforcement team to see what happened on the case they called in at 600 15th Street. It gives them a tool they can access and see if there was resolution, see if it was actually worked, because there is always that question of, was my call actually worked on? So that would be my initial response. There's probably many different ways. I know our neighborhood associations are likely going to be, particularly the presidents, will be consistent users of these as well. But that'd be my initial response, Councilmember.
And is there a vessel to, I'm assuming that you can log code violations online already?
That is certainly part of the citizen reporting opportunity that we still have, whether it be potholes, code violations, et cetera, to be able to report those in an easy manner. That does not exist currently.
Okay. Well, because I was like, if it didn't, once this gets all in its full transformer configuration, that's one of those things that, would make it even more nimble for our people to use, because, I've made this violation report, on the City of Waco's code enforcement site, bam. I'm watching that, these things have happened, or it's been through this process, or if I am the violator, as Councilmember Ewing referenced, here are a list of resources that maybe can assist me in not being, in that lien filed number. You know what I'm saying? So once, we put all of it together, I hope those are the things that once, because this is excellent. And I think it has, endless possibilities of what it is that we can do as a service for our people. But, I just want to make sure that it's not just something that, because we using it, but that it's not, getting as much traction and usage from our neighborhoods as it should.
Sure. I think each of these questions brings up an important point that may be a good closing point for this discussion is these dashboards are iterative in nature. When we release, like with the COVID dashboard, we released that early in April, and it's been changed and reimagined more than 10 to 15 times, to put it mildly, and it'll go through another change in about a week. And so I don't, these suggestions and these comments and questions, we're not taking them as critiques. What I take them as is opportunities for improvement and knowing kind of how it can be better utilized and knowing that there's multiple audiences that can make use of this type of information. So thank you all for weighing in and leaning into this. We're certainly excited about it, just like y'all are.
And I hope that you all took that in that manner, because I know that was the intention, or at least that's from where I was coming from. This is a very living thing, and if it doesn't change, then we've made a mistake. Yeah. So we appreciate everything that you all have put in it so far, and how we move forward.
Good.
So sorry, I know that was supposed to be the ending point, but I do have just one more thing. Like I said at the beginning, I love that we have this for the COVID dashboard, for the code enforcement dashboard. I would absolutely love to see this, a forward-facing dashboard like this that is publicly accessible for road work and road projects that are happening in our city, specifically as we go further into our Better Streets Waco program, and we're doing more work on I-35 and rerouting more traffic. I think it'd be immensely helpful for business owners. I know that I've received calls when work begins to happen, even in regards to private development downtown, because streets get closed or, road work is happening, road improvements are happening. People have to reroute their commute. People have to shut down businesses, and sometimes, they're not always notified. And it's a lot easier to log on to a website and see, hey, this is the reason for this, than having to run up a chain of command to get to the city manager's office to get an answer. So I think that'd be immensely helpful. And I feel as if this sort of format that we have for these dashboards could be easily transposed for that. I know that information isn't always as easy to come across, but just to put that in your guys' purview.
Thanks for the feedback. That's actually in the works. We're actually just starting a project for that exact purpose. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
All right, our next work session, council members, is 2020-579, and it is in regards to the Bridge Street construction project. I believe we have Megan Henderson, Executive Director of City Center Waco, joining us online. Is that correct, Esmeralda?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Give us a moment to get her added to this call, and we'll hear from her on Bridge Street.
Millette, are you there? Megan?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Thank you.
You should be able to share your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Give me just a second to get it to display properly.
All right.
Are we up?
We're seeing it on this end. Council members, can y'all see the City Center Waco screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Megan,
Fantastic.
go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Mayor, council, staff, I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the progress on the exciting Bridge Street Front Porch project. The Bridge Street area, as you know, has a rich history for East Waco, and not just long ago. Until recently, this area functioned almost as an extension of Martin Luther King Park, despite being private property. The 2010 Imagine Waco plan called for the purchase of some of this property to create a public plaza to both anchor coming development and create a community gathering space for East Waco. Rapidly approaching developments bring investment and opportunities, but given that the land would be built upon, it looked as though the public's use might fade. In late 2018, the city authorized City Center Waco to pursue use of the remaining public land, the 100-foot wide Bridge Street right-of-way, to create a festival street and some nearby railroad property to create a public plaza. The idea was to stamp this area with the personality of East Waco, celebrate its heritage, and invite existing and new community members to enjoy it. With the city's blessing, City Center Waco convened focus groups made up of neighborhood members to speak into the planning of such a space. These community folks shared elements of the history, values, and priorities of East Waco. Their direction, and especially the phrase, "We are a front porch neighborhood," guided a design by RBDR that features not only front porch type seating areas and a permanent plaza, but a specially designed street that can be closed and turned into an extended festival area during events. City Center Waco received a TIP award to take this community-driven concept and create an engineered set of plans with intent to turn the plans over to the city for construction in coordination with surrounding developments. We quickly learned that the traditional design, bid, build process would extend the construction timeline. So in order to accelerate completion, the city and City Center Waco turned to a design build framework. As each phase of design was completed, it could then be bid and begun while the next phase was still being designed. A second TIF award provided construction funding. Today, thanks to incredible work by Walker Partners, RBDR, Barsh Company, and the city's team, all 4 major phases of the project have been designed. And as you can see, the look and layout are faithful to the vision cast by the focus groups. I'm excited to walk you through it. The southern portion of the project, so you can see the river is off to the bottom of the screen and the suspension bridge is here. The southern portion of the project and the 100 block of bridge includes the proposed crosswalk, which is in the project as an alternate bid. If funded, it would lead from the suspension bridge across Martin Luther King and into the Festival Street area and the first front porch, an area with seating and shade. The 101 apartments are on the west side and they are almost fully completed and occupied. The grand entrance to the Cambria Hotel is on the east side, and that project is coming up out of the ground as we speak. Here's the approach into the Festival Street space from Martin Luther King Boulevard. Please keep in mind that these renderings are drawn to give you the layout and the look and feel, but they're not exact specifications to the level of bollard spacing, etc. You can see that the cloth-like pattern in the crosswalks and sidewalk would be done with colored pavers. Everything will be flat, so no curb. And the pedestrian space would be marked by special bollards constructed of timber and a deep purple in honor of Paul Quinn College. The seating uses those same materials, while the shade comes from stamped metal screening overhead that creates shadow play on the sidewalk. The landscaping in the sketch is stylized, and so is the sculpture, so they're good illustrations, but not an actual plan for what plants will go where. No sculptures are included in the construction budget, but we will install bases that are art ready and are working with Creative Waco on opportunities to create installations there. Moving north into the 200 block, we find the second porch area, again with shade and seating, but this time imagining space nearby for food trucks. This area is opposite longtime Elm business Empire Seed, as well as 2 buildings belonging to City Center Waco right here. Further north is the plaza, which will be primarily green grassy space with landscaping and a stage. The original design had to be flipped due to a utility easement, but now the stage becomes the focal point at the north end of the project. And if you'll note that Man Street moves south, currently it's up here, it will move south from its current location so that it crosses Elm Avenue in a straight line. The second seating area uses the same materials, but a different pattern for both the seats and the overhead shade structure. And they're not shown, but there will be some small tables in this area as well. Across the street from the seating in the food truck area and behind City Center Waco's building, a compactor will serve both that building and Empire Seed. RBDR, Creative Waco, and East Waco stakeholders identified this as a possible mural location, but the exact mural shown in the picture is just an example from another city. Moving into the plaza, the stage will also incorporate the patterned metal as shade, as well as board-formed concrete that echoes the timbers used on the bollards and the seating. From this view, the back of the stage will be plain so as not to compete with performers for attention. But from the other direction, the back of the stage becomes a possible canvas for a mural or other art. Here's what we know about the overall timeline. Because phase 4 is being bid right now, we don't have an overall final completion date yet. But as you can see, phase 1 is finished, phase 2 is expected to wrap up later this month, and phase 3 is looking like the end of January. So we expect the project to wrap up sometime this spring and for summer 2021 to see the space activated and enjoyed. The project's funding has come primarily from the 2 TIF awards we mentioned, but you'll also recall having kicked in some utilities dollars to build a sewer line we discovered was needed. That was 100% necessary, but it did create some extra challenges to both the budget and the timeline because it had to be done at the beginning. Our whole team is working to balance value with the ambitious vision you've seen so that the public gets the items that it cares about the most. As noted before, one thing we're keeping an eye on is the crosswalk. With pedestrian safety signal enhancements, it's a bigger ticket item than was originally anticipated, so it's currently shown as an alternate bid item. As I've said, numbers are still coming in, but it's a top priority and we're working hard to keep it in the project. So in closing, I'd just like to say that we're doing it. This is as beautiful as anything in the Imagine Waco plan. Now let's make sure that as we get ready to welcome the future, we also continue to welcome the people who've gathered and celebrated and felt at home here, so they continue to feel home here.
Is that it, Megan? That looks great. This is Holmes.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Nice presentation. I just drove through there at lunch today, and it's really impressive, everything that's going on. Not only the city funded projects that are materializing before our eyes, but the adjacent projects also are coming along. The residential building there and the hotels, as you see all that go vertical, it's just very exciting. I really like what we're doing in that part of downtown. It's just the vision is kind of taking place, and it's again materializing before our eyes. It's fantastic. Just great job on getting this kind of overseen, and I appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Megan, this is Hector. I also want to thank you for the presentation. It's very exciting to me to see this development go up even before our very own eyes. I love driving through the parts that I can get through Elm Avenue because of all the construction right now, but I love seeing everything that's going on in East Waco and Elm Avenue and all the surrounding areas. And so I just really want to congratulate you and the staff for the great work that's taking place. I'm excited to see the finished product. And I know this is going to be a great part of our city that people will love to visit more so. And to really highlight all of the great things that are going on in East Waco, the great businesses, the great people, the attraction that it will become even more so because of the work that is taking place. And so really congratulations. And I'm very excited about this project.
Thank you, sir.
Just a real quick follow-up. You had said that the expectation for completion when everything can kind of be used and pedestrians can access it will be summer of next year?
We expect the project to finish sometime in the spring, but whether that's early spring, late spring, at this point, we're not certain. What we know is that next summer we expect to be in the space.
Sure. Okay, no, that's fantastic. And I'll just echo my colleagues on this. I appreciate your work. I think this is one of many wonderful things happening over in East Waco, and I'm excited to see the development going on and looking forward to this being completed and all of the great things and the outdoor gatherings that will be able to happen once we get through this pandemic as well. Yes. I'm looking very, very, very much looking forward to using this space the way it's intended.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Megan, for the presentation. It's a long time coming. One of the things that we look at, and on the mural of the Elm Avenue, East Waco Library is that intersection of history and vision. And I think that projects like this speak to that in the physical manifestation of what those signs and what that intersection means. I think that I'm going to add to John's question, because there's still some unknowns in that, with the pedestrian walk being the main one. Would that push, all things push construction dates back, but I think my question is, with that still unknown, are we still looking at late spring, early summer?
We expect that a good amount of the work in bid package 4 can happen at the same time as the completion of the work in bid package 3.
Mhm.
So it's not that we're not going to be waiting until phases 2 and 3 are finished to begin phase 4. What we won't know, and we won't get the bids back on phase 4 until probably the end of this month, well, middle of this month, is to know just how many days past January 31st they're expecting that to take. So we are hoping that it's, just a couple of months, but to be on the safe side, I think we have to give a little bit of contingency time space around there.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. And I appreciate all the local businesses that have participated in this, RBDR, Barsh, and that they are intentionally looking to hire subs of color. And that's incredibly important to this because it's build as we grow. And in a community that is majority people of color, I think it's imperative and important that as we are, as of right this minute, I don't have any architects of color, I don't think, with firms in the city. So that we use and go to a subcontractor level that we can to continue to engage and utilize our businesses of color in the city is important. And we appreciate the fact that that's a priority for City Center.
Yes, ma'am. We've been energetically engaging with that conversation with our general contractor. And bid package 4 is where the greatest opportunities for those subs to come into the project. And that's why we're approaching the bidding of phase 4 with a special kind of eye to that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just jump in and say that outside of the attraction that it is for people to come to East Waco, because again, it looks phenomenal and it will be that, I am thrilled that the community there, the people that live there currently, the people that will continue to live there, get a chance to have this be done for them and see that the city is excited for them and is putting dollars and putting effort behind a beautiful entryway, gathering space, and sort of hub for that community. So could not be more excited. It looks fantastic. Super excited for the folks that live there.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and I'll just come around with one other thing I wanted to mention. I think our experience with the zoo sculptures and others have shown the importance of public art and the way that it can create a sense of place and shared experience and really be a draw in and of itself. And so I'm grateful for the space allocated to that on this project, and looking forward to kind of what the plan is for that, and to encourage us that as we look at other things, development citywide, that we have a continued focus on that, because I do think it adds an element of dimension and again, that shared experience, and that I think it's important to have that as part of our development, public facing in the future.
Yes, sir.
But great job. Great job.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Megan, for joining us this afternoon and for the great presentation.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Mayor and Council, our next presentation this afternoon will be made by Millette Hopping, President and CEO of Waco Housing Authority. We're adding her to the session now. She'll be joining us to discuss the Waco Housing Authority's low-income housing tax credit program bond issuance at South Terrace. And this is a follow-up to a previously issued informal report at a prior meeting. So I'd like to welcome Millette Hopping to our discussion this afternoon. Millette, are you there? All right, give us a moment.
She's muted.
On mute.
Millette, you're on mute, it appears.
Sorry.
All right, good. I can hear you. Was she going to share her screen as well?
Yes, she's sharing her screen. You can share your screen now, Millette.
Okay. Can you see it? I can see it on my side. I just want to make sure you can see it as well.
No.
Not yet, no.
No? Okay.
I can share if I need
Okay.
to.
Oh, I think we've got it
You
now.
see it now? Okay, good.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for having me today. I appreciate it. Also, I appreciate the help that we received in trying to get this all put together for everyone. As you know, we've been working really hard on converting our public housing into affordable housing, and I think I came to you in January to talk about a poverty waiver. As you know, this South Terrace is the first property we'll be doing. I do have William Walters, who is our bond attorney with Coates Rose, also on the call, so I may defer to him on occasion. But anyway, let's get started. Okay, so of course at South Terrace, the location is at 100 Kennedy Circle. We have 250 units. It says total estimated project costs. It's really about 43 million, but 24.5 is the bond. We are located in a census tract with a poverty rate above 40%. The bond proceeds will be loaned to South Terrace Waco Limited Partnership to finance a portion of the acquisition and development through the partnership. So we are and have applied for 4% non-competitive bonds and tax credits. These will be used, if you look at the ownership organizational chart, we are partnering with Citibank, who is the largest affordable housing lender in our field. And then Enterprise is going to be purchasing those credits. And our partnership with Bridgeport Development, as you can see there, is our developer. They all have experience in doing this with other housing authorities all across the country, and we're very excited to get started. Consequently, we have had to use, remember that we are still dealing with HUD until HUD signs over that deed of trust. And, but we're also now entering into the world of TDHCA. And for those of you who may not know what that means, that's the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, who routinely issues tax credits. We have several arms within our, I wanted to show you this just to kind of make it easier to understand. We have a publicly funded side. Most of you know those three properties. That's Kate Ross, South Terrace, Estella Maxey, and then of course Section 8. The three properties are funded through public housing. That's a subsidized housing based on someone's income at 30% of their income. And Section 8 is also based at 30% of their income. The difference is that a voucher gets issued and a person can choose any type of home they want to live in, whether that's a duplex, another apartment complex. If they want to rent a house, they can do all that, provided the landlord will agree to take the split rent, meaning that the tenant would pay a certain portion and then we would subsidize the difference to the landlord. Typically, Section 8 has a higher fair market rent capability than we get in subsidy from HUD for the public housing properties. It has not been unusual over the last 10 years for HUD to realize that they are $40 to $50 million of a pipeline of need for care and renovation and maintenance that they are not able to fund on the public housing side. We have definitely gotten a very strong message that they see no increases in funding for the public housing side. So we expect funds to continue to be cut in those areas, which is why our board took the leadership it took in trying to start the process for RAD, which is the Rental Administration Demonstration Program. But on the other side of our affiliate side with Waco Housing Authority, we have several nonprofits, and you can see Waco Public Facility Corporation will be the owner of the bond. Waco Public Facility Corporation 2 is the issuer of the bond. So we will be able to issue our own bonds. Waco Housing Opportunities Corporation, also as a nonprofit, but we own several other properties that are done at regular rents, but we are requiring a certain percentage of those units to be set aside for people who meet the criteria for very low and low income. They do not take up the entire property, but we are required under TDHCA guidelines for Resolution Trust Corporation properties to administer those units that way for at least 40 years. And we're about year 22 with those properties. So to give you an idea that we do and understand managing and complying with the state programs, as well as managing properties at a fair market rate. So after the conversion, you'll see that South Terrace has been moved. It will become a property that will now be listed under Waco Public Facility Corporation. So that property will be listed with our Raintree Apartments, Cimarron, and Misty Square Apartments. So it's still going to be here. We're still going to manage and own the property. And we are required through a 40-year term to still conduct business the way we've been conducting business. And by that, I mean that all tenants have to be qualified at 30% of their income. The reason we wanted to go RAD, it's a simple monetary issue. We're allowed, every unit will be tied to a project-based voucher on the property. We are doing a 75-25 split. So 75 of those units, HUD will still tell us what the RAD rate will be, which is higher than the public housing subsidy. On the other 25% of the units, we will be allowed the fair market rent that is used by our Section 8 program to receive subsidy for those 62 units. But using that model allows us to have a more fiscally advantageous property. So our timeline. Okay, so we've had the TEFRA hearing, which is, I'm sorry I talk in initials all the time, but it's the Tax Equity Fiscal Responsibility Act requirement. And of course, we had that public hearing. We had no comments. Then today we're here. We still have the TDHCA board meeting this week. We have our board's adoption of final bond resolutions, et cetera. And then we have to submit all final documentation to the Texas Attorney General for review. And HUD has to approve our financing approval. They've already done their fair housing, so they have verified that we are treating all the tenants the way we're supposed to. They have, once the 30th comes, we will know that they've approved our relocation plan as well, and we can go forward with closing. Our closing estimate is right around the middle of October. And as you can see the rest of it here, we don't anticipate going to construction until January, even if we close in October. That will allow the general contractor to firm up subcontractors under the contractor, deal with them, order supplies, and so forth. So here's a listing of the public meetings that we've had, resident meetings. We wanted to start introducing the idea of the program to all the residents some time ago, so we started back in 2018. We've had 5 meetings. We're only required by HUD to have 2. And then TDHCA requires 1, additional 1, but like I said, we've had 5. I was lucky enough that Ms. Bearfield accepted our invitation and came to one of our meetings pre-COVID. It's been very creative how we have had to go forward in trying to host public meetings. We can do a lot of things online for people who are used to using technology, but for people who are not, we have to still figure out a way for them to meet and ask their questions and make sure that they've been heard. So we did that. It wasn't as big a number as we had in the past because of the 6-foot rules, but we do feel that the tenants are excited about the program. they're finally telling us that they're anxious for these renovations to start, and why is it taking so long? But anyway, we are looking forward to it. I think in the previous handout I turned into the city, they had some drawings that were prepared by RDBR so that you could get a rough idea what the outside would look like, and what the renderings would look like inside, and they were voting. So the tenants voted on their interiors and picked Project B. I don't know if you still have access to that, but so that's what all the interiors will look like, and we can't wait to get started either. Relocation. This is always a real interesting question for the tenants. And despite what they hear out on the street, which I don't understand where that comes from. We've gone through this process already, and we are still getting questions about selling the property to Baylor, which is not ever going to happen. So we have accrued vacancies with HUD approval. Residents are not required to leave the South Terrace property during renovations whatsoever. According to their tenant rights, they are allowed to live on the property once the renovations are completed, and we have no intention of moving them off property. So they'll move once from the present unit that they live in to a completed unit. The contractor will renovate the vacant units, and upon completion, existing households will move into those remodeled units. So it creates a cycle of constant vacancies for contractors to remodel until all 250 units are done. 90 days prior to the move, the actual move, a relocation specialist will come to each household and will do an assessment with that tenant about their needs. Are they truly capable of moving themselves? Do they need assistance? And so forth. The budget has allocated a $1,500 stipend for each household to move with. For those who feel they need assistance during that time period between October and January, we will be going out for bid for local moving companies to assist the tenants in moving who feel they need assistance. For those that feel they can move on their own, they will get the money as well, and they can use it to, pay family members or whoever is moving them as they see fit. So we feel this is the most beneficial process, and they get a choice in how they want to move, and they can accept our help through the movers company, or they can choose to do it on their own. So do you have any questions for me at all?
This is Holmes. I've got a couple of questions. How you doing, Millette? Great presentation.
Good.
I'm looking through the council materials and then also in the presentation that we just did. Do you have like cap stack or capital stack information? How you said that's a $40 million deal?
Right, and then
that wasn't the information.
Right,
but it's only a $24.5 million bond, right?
Right.
So where's the other 15? Or the other 15.
We're borrowing that from Citibank.
Okay, and then would it be possible before the next hearing on this, or maybe this is it, just to get the sources and uses, kind of just a general, here's the transaction, 24.5 is coming from the bond, whatever the amount's coming from Citibank, and that's used for, this other,
Sure.
What are we using it for purchase, I guess, rehab.
Sure.
I just it's usually the first thing I look at is who's doing it, who are the parties, what's the transaction, and I don't want to get lost in the forest and the trees and all that, but the trees are definitely getting this. I love the intent here. We're trying to get this place improved and create better living quarters for folks that live there, and I support that 100%. But I want to get a better feel for what does this transaction kind of more look like. The city has no liability in this at all. All we're doing is saying,
exactly.
It looks great. Go on. But I would like to just see, but
I think that information, I think that information is readily available. In fact, Bill, are you on the call?
He is, but I have to let him in. Give me just a second.
Okay, sorry.
And
I was going to say, I think those kinds of things are always helpful to know in regards to just the kind of partnerships we bring to the city. I did want to say that we did make it a stipulation for our general contractor choice. You must choose a minimum of 60% local subcontractors. We would prefer 90%. So they have agreed to that. So we anticipate that bringing more dollars and dollars that stay in Waco. Bill, are you on the call? Maybe, maybe not. I was going to say, I think he could probably send it to me real quick and I could post it, but apparently I can't get him on the phone or I can't get him on the call.
Let's go to unmute. He should be allowed to speak. He may have to unmute his phone.
Oh, Bill, can you unmute?
Hello?
There you are.
Hello.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, Bill. Representative Holmes Councilman Holmes had just asked about sources and uses, so we could kind of go over that real quick. He would like it spelled out for him, I assume on paper, and I can get him that probably by the end of today, but
sure,
I just
we
felt
have
like
that.
if you were here, you could answer it.
Yeah, let's back up for a second. One of the reasons that a housing authority affiliate undertaking this sort of transaction issues tax-exempt debt is because at the same time it generates 4% tax credits. So while the debt itself, the issuance will create about $24 million in debt proceeds, the tax credits generated will be sold to a tax credit investor that showed up in the little ownership chart as a limited partner. And so a lot of the capital stack will be equity from that tax credit investor too. Wynkoop and Circle to the right side there will be purchasing the tax credits generated by this. And that's also the reason that the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs is involved. They allocate those credits to this partnership, and then Wynkoop will purchase them, providing tax credit equity as part of the development financing. And Millette, I can send you right now. I'm not sure how to get it to the folks at the
Yeah, you can
city
email it to me and I'll get it to Esmeralda.
Okay.
Thanks. And Citibank is the subordinated debt buyer, and they're serving as investment banker as well, I suspect.
Right. So Citibank's role in this is they will provide a bridge loan, but they're also purchasing the tax-exempt debt that will be issued by the Housing Authority affiliate.
Okay. Okay, yeah, if I could just get that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Certainly.
Hey, Millette, this is Hector. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really do appreciate you coming before council and sharing this information with us. I do have to say, as I looked at the material that you provided council, I love the new look of South Terrace. I have to say that I was very impressed of how it's going to look. I love the fact that the people that live in South Terrace can pick an accent wall if they want to, their appliances, et cetera, things like that. It's just that the entire development is going to undergo a new upgrade that has been needed for many years. And so I really do appreciate that. I love the fact that, as we begin with any construction project, as you begin to remodel, there's always that fear. Are people going to have to be relocated or moved around like chess pieces? But I'm very at ease to know that no one has to leave South Terrace, that they'll just stay within the complex as the buildings are getting worked on. I also appreciate the $1,500 stipend that each family entity will receive to help them move, however they deem necessary, if they want to hire family members or if they want to hire a moving company. I just think it'll come in very handy, especially for our older older community that live there that possibly cannot move on their own and move the heavy furniture and equipment, et cetera, things like that. I do have a few questions for you, if that's all right. I noticed that, you know, in the relocation process, in the slide that we're currently looking at, you know, as soon as one set of units are worked on, then some folks will be moved to those redone areas, and that'll be their permanent home. How are we handling, or what has been the feedback if someone doesn't want to move from their current location? So for example, they want their place remodeled, they just want to move temporarily as their home is remodeled, but they want to move back. Will they be allowed to do that, or is it just we're going to move them as the phases are complete?
We will be moving them as the phase is complete. We cannot promise somebody they would get to be in their same unit.
Okay.
Some regulations we have to meet with both HUD and TDHCA. So at present, I do have a few families that are either overhoused or underhoused. And by that, I mean, we have families who at one time had children living with them who are now grown. They live elsewhere, and that family may have one or two people, but they don't need a 4-bedroom anymore. So those families that are underhoused, meaning they're ones that are in a 1-bedroom, but really should have 2 or 3 bedrooms. I have some families where grandparents have sort of taken in their grandchildren. And unfortunately, I didn't have those units available to them. So what has happened is that those families have to be corrected. So we will move those families first so that they're in the correct bedroom size. And then after that, it'll be based on need. So as they finish remodeling a handicapped unit, obviously, we'll look at the handicapped families, and then the ones that have the most needs first, or have been living at the property for the longest as we go down that process. So we are not remodeling somebody while they're in place because it's that substantial. And we have gotten through, I think most of the tenants accept that at this point. I think now it's a matter of who gets to be first. I think there'll be some issues later with somebody who has been in on property longer not getting to move in before somebody who is underhoused or overhoused, because that discussion came up. But we try to explain to them that we cannot, within the first 90 days, TDHCA will expect a report that shows those people are all living in appropriate units. So, yeah.
Perfect. And then another question I had is, I know there's, reading the material, there's approximately, and correct me if I'm wrong, 250 units at South Terrace?
Yes.
And currently you have, did you say 30 open, or approximately 30 to begin the remodeling process?
Yeah, 32. And if we accrue more by January, then that would be just that many more we can get done at one time.
Okay.
So
and
it would be nice to get them done in those phases.
So we're looking at approximately 12 to 18 months to complete the project. So we're looking at 3, 4, 5 phases?
Correct.
Okay. And then the other question I have that I didn't see is, what about the playground area and the youth center at South Terrace? Will they receive some TLC as well?
The playground is included. TDHCA considers that as part of the property. However, they do not include the youth center. So the present senior center will become our management office, which will include an exercise area and a typical business room with computers as well. That's what we expect our police departments to work out of. They're off-duty police, our security. And the present management office will be used as a laundromat because we don't have all the units that have washers and dryers. So we will be providing that on property so that they don't have to go off property the way they've had to, which is over 1.5 miles away.
Sure.
To the closest laundromat. But we will put in our own money to update the youth center. it is our expectation that what we want to do is blend in with the construction. So we have that as a project for RDBR, but understandably the people come first before a building that is not a non-dwelling unit. So I want everything to blend in properly, to look good. I want you to drive through and not know that it's a former public housing property. My intent is to set a standard for affordable housing in Waco, and we want to have communities that are inclusive of people who maybe don't make as much as everybody else. And I'm a big believer and proponent that a quality of life is substantially affected by where you live and how you live. So we're starting with South Terrace because I thought South Terrace, being the youngest at 52 years old, would be the simplest one to start with. Our intent is to go to Stella Maxi next because it is the middle child. So it's about 70 something years old. And then of course, Kate Ross is the grand old aunt who is over 80. So with each property, there's going to be different personality, neighborhood personality, so to speak. And so we want to be able to address those. We'll be looking at starting some of our community inputs on our properties if COVID ever goes away at one time. We are going to start that process, which is why I feel we have to have more meetings, because we can't just do it the old way with COVID. So I want to hear from the different groups in the community and churches and the neighborhood association, like we did with South Terrace, but I would really welcome opportunities where it would have been nice if everybody could have gotten together and sort of been a team to work this through. Obviously, COVID presents its own challenges, and we will live up to those.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. I'm very excited about this project. I love the new amenities that are coming to South Terrace. And so thank you for your work on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Melissa, I'll jump in real quick and just, I agree with, I agree this project is good and necessary. The commitment to providing, again, quality housing to our residents, I think is incredibly important. And I'm very supportive of us going forward with this, but I have similar questions as to Councilmember Holmes, and I know you're going to get some information, but just before when we're looking at it, if you can just kind of help me fully understand. So currently, this is as a public facility. This is technically owned by HUD, and they provide stipends for the upkeep and maintenance of the units. And we're making this transition because you're able to get higher allocation from HUD for under the RAD program, which is a fun acronym in and of itself, harkens back to the 80s, as well as being able to use a portion of the units for the RAD program, which is higher than what you'd be getting from HUD for the current structure, and then a portion of the units which could technically be market rent, but which you intend to use to technically charging market rents, but also utilizing your Section 8 vouchers to make up that difference. Correct?
Yes, it's actually not a Section 8 voucher, but what it will be is a fair market rent where we collect a higher subsidy because those units are allowed to be at a higher market rent. The other thing I didn't mention was obviously TDHCA has a higher admittance limit, income limit, than we have typically been allowed to use before. So Waco Housing Authority owns South Terrace as a public housing development. Or it's a deed of trust. So we will go into ownership when HUD releases the deed of trust through our Waco Public Facilities Corporation, which still remains as a nonprofit. So the way it works is we get an amount yearly from HUD, usually in January, that tells us what those rents will be for the bulk of the units, which is the 188 of those units. But the 62 units, I get to use my standard Section 8 fair market rents, also set by HUD, and which are also higher. all of it is higher than the present public housing subsidy. So we move out of a public housing development model that is very tightly funded by Congress each year. And we move into a more of a multifamily role under HUD, but we're the landlord as opposed to being an arm of HUD, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, nothing with HUD is simple, and I fully recognize this. And so which is why it's important. I mean, as we're working with you to help authorize this $25 million bond, that we fully understand kind of how this investment and how this how this transaction is structured. So, all right, so you're a partner with HUD, and currently Waco Housing Authority owns this unit, and you're going to be selling it into the newly formed limited partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whose investors include the Public Facility Corporation, which will be the eventual owner of it, a limited partner, which is solely comprised of the development partner who will be doing the remodeling, and then limited partner who's going to provide equity funding in the form of purchasing the tax credits that will be generated through the sale of these bonds.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So what's the total transaction amount? Because so we're issuing about 25 million of bonds here. You said cities giving you another 15, I guess, to help facilitate the purchase. And then what's the equity component? I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel for what the whole kind of everything together, what the amount is of this transaction.
Go ahead, Bill. Right there.
I think the total. Hi, can you hear me?
Barely, Bill.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
The total transaction or total development cost, I think, on this is about $43 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm trying to.
And so we are 43 million. So of which there's tax credit purchases, there's a subordinated debt by city, and then there's 25 million we'll be issuing that will be generating the tax. Or we will not be issuing, but South Terrace LP will be issuing
Right.
for the purpose of doing the rehab. And then
That's correct.
Okay, and then at the end of the bond term, or at what point since the equity partners get bought out and this becomes solely owned by the Housing Authority under its Public Facility Corporation?
So on tax credit transactions, housing tax credit transactions, there's called a 15-year compliance period. So the property basically has to be operated in compliance with the tax credit rules for 15 years. And so any tax credit investor will want to stay in the transaction until that period runs, because they're also liable for a recapture of the tax credits if anything goes wrong for that compliance period. So it's typical on these deals to have a 15-year term, basically, at which point then the tax credit investor will exit and the housing authority will reacquire the development.
That part of it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Kind of. No, I think I get it. Again, with tax credits and with HUD and with all this, I mean, none of these are simple. And they're, the capital stack, as Holmes mentioned, is just want to make sure I get it clear on that. But no, I'm thank you for that clarification. Again,
Sure thing. And just so y'all know, the tax credits themselves will be about $12.5 million of the stack.
Okay. And so where does city's 15 million come in subordinated debt?
Well, it's really, they're purchasing the 24 or so million of tax exempt securities. And they may make a loan. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Okay.
Esmeralda, I forwarded you the sources and usage documentation for the councilman.
I have it, Millette. I'll forward it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate that. But again, other than that, I think we do have a strong commitment, this council, on promoting additional quality affordable housing. And I think that this project will do that. And I'm looking forward to continued investment in this area in future years. And I appreciate y'all's looking at this and moving this project forward.
Just remember, I'm coming through 2 times.
Hi, Millette. Go ahead, Darius.
Oh,
How are
okay.
you?
Hey, this is Darius. I just wanted to say, you said something earlier about, being a firm believer in the quality of housing you have, dictating quality of life and the way that moves forward. And I couldn't agree more. I'm so excited to see that we're giving so many people and families an opportunity to have something nice for themselves, and just the way that your brain rewires itself when having a clean, safe, and nice place to live isn't number one on your priority list, and you're able to become a better contributing member to your community in those ways. I did have a couple of questions. First, the quality of life for the tenants during construction, do we have any sort of safeguards in place for that? Obviously, we're happy that they don't have to leave the property during construction, but I just know that there can be encumbrances upon normal daily life as 30 units at a time are being completely gutted and renovated. So is that something you guys have looked at and sort of maybe have a system in place for?
Yes, we have already, part of our general contractor package, when we looked at bidding it out with the developer for him to find somebody who could meet all that criteria, was of course creating safety first. We want the safety first proponents. Especially with COVID, because kids are home. So it becomes more important than maybe it was considered previously. So that's a big issue for us. The additional part is that they cannot be there except for certain times of the day. So our working hours is that stipulation. So we're present, management is present, and we can deal with any issues if anything should occur, God forbid. So that's the first couple of ways we want to look at things. There will be no Saturday and Sunday working. There's none of that rush. I want it to be done well, but I have to take into consideration that we have 250 households, and there's not just one person in each of those households. So we have to make that work. One of the other things, of course, in this process is the upgrade to the Wi-Fi. HUD's requirements are always very low, and we have opted to spend the money at a much higher rate so that the schools can carve out a bandwidth and so forth that will not affect my tenants at the same time. So everybody can get on at the same time. We have hotspots and all that, but we want people to be able to do things from their home as necessary and be able to concentrate the way they need to. I'm not going to be able to control noise. It's a given, people hammering and people putting things in there. We will address any issues that the tenants come up with. That's one of the reasons we have a relocation specialist. That person is meant to be the liaison between the tenants also during construction, as well as helping them really assess their capabilities for moving and so forth. We have tenants who think they can move, but really they can't. They're over 60 years old, and yes, they're very strong, but to move a whole household requires more than one set of hands. And so that's their job. And so they'll be addressing issues as they come up. And we want to make note of that. We're looking at doing 2 more properties. So what can we learn from this process that we can address ahead of time for our other 2 properties? So everybody's been real agreeable, but I think until you get into the middle of it and get your hands dirty, we really won't know exactly if all the safety precautions, noise issues, the work times, all those things will actually be helpful or not. So I appreciate your comments. I'll certainly make sure that we try to consider all of that. But we have tried to consider a way to deal with immediate concerns as they happen.
That's great. That beyond needed explanation on that. Next, you sort of touched on this, but is the plan as of right now, you've got 32 vacant units with possibly more between now and January that you'll hold on to for the purpose of renovation. Is the plan basically to whatever that set number is, be it 32 or 40 or 45 units between now and then when you start that are vacant, to basically work in waves of that amount. So, you have, okay, perfect. So you've got 35 units, you remodel them, you move 35 in, then you start in the next 35 and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to explain a phase number, like to give you a phase number, like maybe
because you don't know what you're working.
Yeah, I don't know what I've got for vacancies. Brand new developer, he could come in and tell you, oh no, we can do this in X amount, rent it out, and then build the next phases and so forth. I can't do that. I don't know yet what I really will have, but it is our intent to get those all done and then start moving so we have the next set without a break in between. So they will continue working until the whole property is properly developed.
Awesome. And let me just say from experience that a brand new developer coming in and giving you a date is probably just about as accurate as anything you could give us right now. Let me just say that. And then finally, just as tenants move into these new units, do you guys have a process for any sort of punch list items that tenants come up with as they move in? Because there's going to be oversights in the construction process, things that are overlooked, missed, not finished out all the way. Is there capacity for those little repairs as they get settled in to be taken care of?
Yes, we have a construction superintendent, and so he works for the housing authority. He won't work for the general contractor. That's not his role, and he knows it. So his whole goal is to make sure that once the tenants are in, I still want the relocation specialist to go in, make sure everything's okay, but then to come back in 2 weeks and 3 weeks and check again over a 30-day period to make sure that we address whatever still needs to be addressed. So if we're missing the outlet cover or something like that, that it isn't that it hasn't been done. And so we get it addressed right away.
Awesome. I love that. I think you guys are going about this in the exact right way. And again, I'm so excited to just give so many people an opportunity to have something that's nice that, up to this point, potentially haven't had that experience. So good on you guys. Could not be more supportive of the work you guys are doing. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Millette. I appreciate this presentation. It does our hearts good to know that these changes are happening for our communities. You've got some, as we've seen, as I was talking to some folks in that one meeting that I was able to get to pre-pandemic, before that have been lifelong residents. And,
correct.
That's important. Number one, that they won't have to be displaced, even though it is time for a much needed upgrade to their living, because we all know how your quality of life is connected to your home. One of the things that the council members have basically, addressed my questions or concerns. Kudos to you for increasing the bandwidth on your broadband, because we all know, if you didn't know, you learned over the past 6 months how important your internet access is, especially with us not stepping out of this pandemic tomorrow. So taking the initiative to do it yourself is important for your people and for your residents, because, I just know in my house, if each of my children have to be on a device, I'm on one, my husband's on one, my mother-in-law's on one, it's going to be a lag if you don't have the proper bandwidth.
Correct.
So I want to thank you for doing that. You're doing yourself a good service in utilizing the people who you represent to be your storytellers. It is imperative that in order to thwart misinformation and the bad rumor mills that live in this world that we have, is that you continue to communicate and have the people who are affected by what is happening with them tell your story. So I just want to make sure that as you transition from South Terrace, as you transition to Estella Maxey, in that beginning phase of what it is that you will do and what is changing, it is clear to the residents how what is changing affects them. And going forward in all of the projects that we do, or that you all do, that communication is key. And how is it, you have to break it down to the, most basic concept. How does it affect me? And so, or how does it affect my family members if I'm, someone who's looking, well, they about to change so-and-so. What does that mean? So if there is a steadfast communication piece that does that, doesn't have to tell all your business, because they might not need to know how the bond rate is, they might not need to know. But if I have to move, what is it how is it gonna be phased? Answering those questions, I think, will be key in going forward with the other developments. But I appreciate all the work that's been done. I appreciate the fact that the residents had tremendous input in shaping their community, because that's important. And so I appreciate the efforts from the Housing Authority for that.
I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but one of the things that we're required to do is that once somebody lives at the property after it's renovated for 12 months, they are eligible for an available Section 8 voucher. And just so you know the difference between a project-based voucher and a Section 8 voucher, a Section 8 voucher has mobility, meaning that you can go anywhere you want to go, and we'll pay the rent. So, and that's not just in my jurisdictional area. We've had people graduate from TSTC and go to work in Arizona or somewhere else, and we have to calculate the rent subsidy based on where they are until the local housing authority will absorb that voucher with one of their own, and we get ours back. It is my hope that the people who have lived there for a very long time will continue to live there, but I did get told at my last meeting that some of them might have lived there for almost 35 years, but they want that voucher so they can rent a house. They've always wanted to be in a house, not an apartment. And they're very grateful for the tool, because presently we have 2,700 people on our wait list for Section 8. And that's probably a good 3 years before we would get to those people, just so that you're aware. And so this is a tool actually that will help facilitate some movement into that process.
All right.
But thank you. Any more questions?
Just one more very quick one.
Sure.
I thank you for the capital stack information. I was able to review it. I agree with everything you just said. And I think this is all fantastic. Just real quick, just for, again, so I'm understanding, who actually is the seller that is floating the land acquisition note? Is that HUD, or is that the housing authority to South Waco, South Terrace?
Exactly. So in essence, the housing authority is selling the apartments to its affiliate.
Okay. Okay. I got that. So, okay. Very good. Thank you. Good project, guys.
All right. Thanks, Millette and the team, for joining us.
No problem.
Next up, Mayor and Council, we have our final work session. It's a discussion of downtown streets reconstruction, be led by Jim Reed, our program manager for Better Streets Waco. And I'm going to ask him to work through the slides briskly. And then we may or may not have time for questions at the end. We'll have to see how long it takes. So just bear with us. Go ahead, Jim.
Can you get your presentation up?
I'll start off with saying good afternoon, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Jim Reed. I am the Streets Division Manager for the City of Waco Public Works Department. As I talk today about downtown Waco, a tremendous amount of infrastructure planning has been set into motion to not only update our aging infrastructure downtown, but more importantly, play a role in our city's economic growth and vitality. Waco's streets and water utility department are planning to invest more than $47 million in downtown infrastructure construction, which began last May with Fifth Street Improvements Project. Other projects that make up the $47 million investment shall be discussed in detail during this presentation. Moving actually into the major projects identified in the downtown core, all projects are well underway with a project team whose experience with similar projects can give us the greatest return on every dollar. In addition, each project team has been tasked to implement their project in a manner that public outreach shall be routinely addressed to keep our greater community informed how each project will impact their day.
Like all infrastructure, streets deteriorate with time due to wear and tear, weathering by excessive heat and rainfall, and the lack of preventive maintenance. The goal of addressing the major downtown projects shall focus primarily on movement of people and services, repairing 6 major streets: Washington Avenue, Austin Avenue, Franklin Avenue, Elm Avenue, and 4th and 5th Streets, which collectively carry the bulk of the local traffic into the heart of our city. The Washington Avenue Conversion Project. This project shall convert this one-way city street corridor to 2-way operations by rehabilitating Washington Avenue from University Parks Drive to 18th Street, while enhancing cyclist safety and addressing Title III ADA regulation changes. The work associated with Washington Avenue is primarily related to full-width pavement rehabilitation and structural repair, and includes only a limited amount of sidewalk work. This project is funded exclusively with local funding through streets, water utilities, and TIF. Originally, this project was designed and bid with the cycle track concept in mind, in a median area that divided traffic from cyclists as shown on the cross-section in the lower right. Due to growing cost overruns related to market changes, especially in traffic signal modernization, Public Works, with council approval, shall be rebidding the package with standard buffered bike lanes that complement the traffic flow as shown in the lower left cross-section. The original concept of a cycle track shall remain in the big bid package as an add alternate, so council and management may consider those costs. The sources of funding associated with this project are shown to highlight the various contributions made across the city by departments to make this happen. This slide demonstrates a shopping list of amenities that shall be included with each concept. Biggest difference between the packages is the elimination of the median and landscaping work in the base bid. Austin Avenue improvements. This project has been vetted through planning and community involvement, since fall of 2017, and stands at being 100% complete with internal design services. The project shall address uptown Austin Avenue between 11th Street and 18th Street. The project is funded with future local funding through streets and water utilities. The general amenities that shall be addressed with this improvement includes non-compliant sidewalks with miscellaneous pedestrian safety and ADA features, pavement rehabilitation, water and sewer infrastructure, isolated storm sewer system modifications and drainage inlet relocations, and the elimination of trolley tracks found in conflict with the proposed work within Austin Avenue. Franklin Avenue conversion, another project targeted at one-way street conversion to 2-way operations by rehabilitating Franklin Avenue from University Parks Drive to 18th Street while enhancing pedestrian and Title III ADA regulation changes. This project is funded primarily with future local funding through streets and water utilities. Downtown overlay concept implementation is still under discussion and consideration as we determine how the corridor should best fit and function as related to alternative transportation. Current construction estimate is $4.8 million. This is a transformational project that provides commuting options through the heart of our city. In this set of cross sections between 18th and 11th Street, we shall be evaluating the use of either a 5-lane section with 1 lane providing left turn movements, or a standard 4-lane section. Both options offer 2 lanes of travel in each direction, but provide limited parking opportunities due to the number of existing drives within these limits. Between 11th and 4th Street, our goal is to preserve the 2-lane directional opportunity, but enhance parking along the easternmost curb line. Franklin Avenue shall be constructed as a transportation corridor that focuses on the movement of traffic through downtown. The project shall also promote pedestrian safety by performing sidewalk spot repair along with addressing pedestrian safety and ADA completion. Includes pavement rehabilitation, isolated storm sewer system modifications, and inlet relocations. All corridor enhancements shall be addressed in a means to support the development of a future bus rapid transit or BRT system in partnership with Waco Transit. As related to the BRT and the Federal Transit Administration, we've talked to FTA, and they believe that leveraging of in-kind cost by local governments to deliver complete street projects maximizes the benefits to the BRT system. What the system brings to the broader community is important to what Franklin conversion will deliver. Elm Avenue revitalization. This widely discussed downtown complete street project is part of an overall enhancement effort by the City of Waco to revitalize the important historic corridor in Northeast Waco. The project is funded with local contributions from street, water utilities, storm, TIF, and a sizable award of $2.4 million in federal funding. Phase 1 construction commenced during the spring of 2020, which addressed street width improvements between Hood Street and Clifton Street. It is anticipated to be completed by the first part of 2021, which aligns with the plans to start the larger revitalization efforts along Elm Avenue. The larger project, titled Elm Avenue Phase 2, addresses complete street corridor elements during construction spanning from MLK Boulevard to Hood Street. It also overlaps Phase 1 work by completing valued pedestrian and lighting enhancements towards Clifton Street. Corridor improvements shall include concrete and brick paver sidewalks, historic style street lamps and landscaping, ADA compliant crosswalks with pedestrian safety features, street trees suited for downtown urban area, water and sewer infrastructure, isolated storm sewer modifications, and the elimination of trolley tracks located in Elm Avenue. 4th Street improvements. This project is in the preliminary phase of design work, and it is evident the amount of work to be addressed and scoped shall require a sizable financial commitment on the part of the city. The project is funded primarily with future local funding through streets and water utilities. Downtown overlay concept implementation is still under review for options to secure grant-eligible funding that enhances and promotes pedestrian travel. Current construction estimate is $13.2 million. The revitalization of 4th Street shall entail a variety of components that were previously discussed. Some of the identified project needs include constructing street improvements through rehabilitation, retaining bike lanes, spot repair of non-compliant sidewalks, constructing ADA ramps, and isolated upgrades to both the storm sewer system and illumination system. 5th Street improvements. As this presentation of today, construction continues on 5th Street at IH-35 and shall extend over the next 18 months to Bosque Boulevard. Roads are to remain open to through traffic with only lane closures. The work shall mirror the existing cross-section of the street by maintaining travel lanes, parking, and a single eastbound bike lane. TTG Utilities, a proven local contractor, was awarded the competitive bid. With a bid of $9.6 million, the project is funded with local funding through contributions from streets, water utilities, and TIF. TIF funding shall address known issues with pedestrian and storm infrastructure along the westernmost border area of Webster Avenue between 4th and 5th Streets. The work addressed under this construction contract shall complement the corridor with improvements to include the replacement of and refurbishing of pedestrian amenities, ADA compliant sidewalks, pedestrian safety features, street pavement reconstruction, water and sewer infrastructure, isolated storm sewer modifications, and the elimination of trolley tracks found within 5th Street. When we talk about funding needed to move all of these projects forward into construction, it is important to stress the average cost per project estimates to be about $8 million. And the collective cost for all projects equals $47 million. It is clearly understood that the majority of these funds come from city bond and/or cash dollars annually obligated by council. The screenshot before you is shared to aid in understanding what is completely funded and what funding we need to request with future budget years. We're about halfway through finding the funding that is needed to be dedicated to these 6 projects. The largest shortfall is shown in red throughout today's presentation and involves future requests starting with budget year 2022. The collective future funding needed to move all projects through construction amounts to $22.9 million. Project schedules. The collective projects previously discussed do not allow for any form of relaxed construction schedule because of the magnitude of the construction work and the thousands of people who walk, bike, bus, and travel across downtown Waco each day. A carefully planned and approved phase construction schedule must be managed and reviewed. Communicating and reorganizing necessary adjustments within the plan is the best way to tackle the complexity of the collective projects. From this slide, the most obvious solution to avoiding gridlock is to maintain an approach whereby no two parallel arterial corridors are under construction at the same time. Example is that while 5th Street is under construction, 4th Street shall progress to final design and commence only upon 5th Street construction being accepted as complete and closed. Careful coordination of construction phasing, respect for safety, and sound communication with the stakeholders downtown is the only way these projects can be considered a success. Next projects to receive bids shall be Elm Avenue Phase 2, the federal grant project, and the rebid of Washington Avenue conversion. We hope to be before council during the month of November to recommend for your consideration a lowest responsive contractor to commence with both projects. The return for moving all these projects forward is the City of Waco receives valued transportation and utility enhancements that promote unity, sustainability, and a bright future as related to the movement of people and services. That concludes my presentation today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council, we need to be into executive session here in about 4 minutes. So if we've got brief questions, we can do that. If not, we may be able to hold or ask for informal reports on some other questions going forward. Anybody got anything quick?
Nope, I'm good. Good projects.
Yeah, I'm good too, Mayor. Nice Gantt chart, by the way.
Great Gantt chart, the best.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, Jim, thank you for a great report and for the great work that you continue to do for us in streets. This is really going to make a big difference to downtown over the next few years. Thank you. Are there any requests for future agenda items?
Mayor Deaver, I do have one. I have been very concerned with the number of homicides we have seen in Waco alone this year. And I have been receiving some questions about, how Waco PD is addressing those issues. And so I would like for us to address here in the near future what the police department is doing to address those homicides taking place and some tactical or tangible things that we have planned between now and the end of the year, how we can address that.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Sabito. Any other requests?
Sorry. In addition to, I can't see you because I have to scroll to see. In addition to Councilmember Sabito's request about PD and the murders, if we could add where we are with the behavioral resource team, because I know all of that will play into that as, the reimagining of policing and public safety and how we do that. So in addition to the one, I think it would just be better if we added all of that into a presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Bearfield. Councilmember Young?
Yes, I know that a little while ago we removed tax foreclosed properties the city had in its possession to then sell from the website, and I just wanted to maybe get you an informal report on the process of getting those back up in a productive way to ensure that those are going to quality end users and things like that.
Very good. All right, any other requests? Okay, we will now recess the work session and reconvene regular session for executive session as read into the record by the city secretary at 5:14 p.m.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council will go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. 1, attorney briefing, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071, Southwestern Bell Telephone Company, DBA AT&T Texas versus the City of Waco, Texas and USIC Locating Services LLC, cause number 2018-4362-3, pending in the 74th District Court. 2, attorney briefing, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071, and real property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072, City Waco Independent School District and McLennan County owned properties in the area bounded by Bosque Boulevard, Lake Air Drive, Cobbs Drive, and North Knee Road. 3, real property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072, and 4, economic development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. We are now in executive session at 5:14 p.m.